I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting would have lasted long.
Hello there.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Happy day late Thanksgiving. I hope you and your families had a wonderful holiday if you're in the United States, or maybe you just had a great Thursday if you're listening somewhere else. I had a great Thanksgiving. I was stuffed full of turkey. Our table looked identical to the Book of Boba Fett feast, so it was awesome. It was super good. And I even got to get down and dirty and have a Star Wars argument with my wife's cousin. Since normal people argue about, boring stuff like religion and politics at Thanksgiving, I got the chance to argue about what matters. The host of Star Wars Station got to argue about Star Wars. And so, with Thanksgiving over, it's now the very American holiday of Black Friday. We're recording today on Black Friday, and if you've glanced at Amazon, Star Wars is on sale all over the place. I've already gotten a couple Star Wars gifts for myself, for my cousin, for a few people that I know are going to appreciate them, and so I was super excited about that. And I've spent the week thinking about what I'm thankful for. And I'm certainly thankful for Star Wars. Obviously, it made the list of what I'm thankful for. And what else made the list of what I'm thankful for is Star Wars news. Because we got a bunch of it this week. It kind of felt like celebration this week. Because there's multiple big articles that came out that we're going to talk about today. We're recording this podcast on Friday. Like I said, we just took a little bit of a break because of the holiday weekend. Obviously, we normally record on Wednesdays. But I was traveling. And so now I'm in my in-laws' office recording this episode, and we are going to take a crack at talking about an extra long HoloNet news segment. We're just going to talk about all of the huge Star Wars related news that came out this week. And so here to talk about that news with me is the Dex's Diner denizen himself, Colin Archer.
Man, Carter, we're not talking about just any news. There's some seriously impactful things that have been just in the last day or two that we get to hear about. It's really fascinating. I can't wait to dive in. And I'm in my pajamas too. I've enjoyed the holiday quite a lot.
Yeah, it's been a good holiday week so far. I've been having a good time. And I'm excited to get into the Christmas season. We have a How the Force Works question that I think we're going to get really deep into how Star Wars relates to the holiday season and Christmas and all of that. But that's jumping ahead, because right now we're going to begin this podcast with the news that all Star Wars fans have long been anticipating, and news that I'd say, so all fans have probably been anticipating this. Most fans are celebrating this. Not everybody, but most fans are celebrating the fact that Dave Filoni has been named Chief Creative Officer at Lucasfilm. So you can cue the celebration at the end of the Phantom Menace music. We won. It is definitely cause to celebrate, because in a Vanity Fair exclusive that came out just a couple days ago, we're going to talk about everything in that article, but the main part at the very beginning is that Dave has a new position directly under Kathleen Kennedy, working much closer with her and steering the direction of the Star Wars universe. So, Colin, I just want to start out asking you how you felt after you heard the news.
Man, this story pulls me in so many directions. So what it does for me primarily is confirm that Ahsoka was a success. It's easy to fall into a trap that there's some detractors out there, because we had, compared to seasons 1 and 2 of Mando, season 3 wasn't as stellar it wasn't as eye-catching. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other adjectives we can throw in there comparing season 3 to season 2. And then I know some of the bomb throwers had a lot to say about Ahsoka. And, I think one of our criticisms is it's really hard to roll into that show without having seen the Rebels cartoon. A lot of people say a lot of
it was tough for casual fans to really get all of the impact. That was one of the things I argued with that cousin this week.
yeah, and so from a certain point of view, that's a legitimate criticism, right? But what I really think is, in the conversations I've had with people, instead of people being repelled by that notion, they're drawn in more and want to go back and review what the cartoon was actually about.
I'd certainly heard that sentiment from a lot of fans.
Yeah, it's a fun topic to discuss. I mean, because the characters, they really deliver when it gets right down to it. And you get so much more when you go back to the cartoon and get to see who Ezra was and what the significance of Thrawn going to the other galaxy means.
No, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right.
And we don't have to dwell, there's a lot that we can expound on that. The other thing I want to mention on the Dave Filoni thing is this also stems from, I think, at a shareholders meeting or the interview with Bob Iger. He mentioned like Disney's in this peaks and valleys. They're in a valley type swing right now. And so this is for me, certainly, but I really do think this is a path forward to climb out of the valley, if you will. Like I said,
I think so.
This confirms that Ahsoka was a success. That they're willing to get behind fully with the Dave Filoni Mandoverse mindset, if you ask me. So yeah, I mean the future is really bright with this thing. We already heard about the Mandoverse movie, Ahsoka Season 2. I mean, we got a lot to talk about just in this one about news with all these shows. And Filoni's the way to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we are Dave fans, obviously. We think that he does a great job with Star Wars. There are detractors out there. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but we are not some of those detractors. I think Dave is the right guy to have his hand on the wheel here. We already knew that he'd done some creative advising similar to this on different projects, like Kenobi, but he didn't have a direct hand in them. By his own admission in this article, he says that he kind of came late to the production of a lot of things, that he'd see it after it was well on its way. And so we can kind of read into that he didn't have much power to tweak things, to nudge things, and it is a Herculean effort to try and adjust something that has already begun filming. And so really all Dave could do was, maybe that you should say this character instead of this character, or this planet instead of this planet. And now it seems like he's going to have a much more direct hand on guiding stories. And he's going to bring more cohesion to the galaxy far, far away.
Yeah. I mean, the way I read between the lines, what it sounds to me like he's going to set some boundaries of where this place should be, lines that shouldn't be crossed, this and that, so that they're making the best Star Wars product possible.
Yeah, well, he says so. A direct quote from this article is, "When we're planning the future of what we're doing now, I'm involved at the inception phase." And so that, I mean, we've got a lot of Star Wars projects that have been announced that we don't know how they're going to come to fruition yet, but we do know that Dave is going to have a hand in these new projects, and that with it being at the inception phase, most of these movies are at that phase. So, do you think Dave is working with Stephen Knight on the new Rey film? Do you think he's working with Mangold to shape the new Dawn of the Jedi film? I mean, he probably has email chains, conversations with these people now on a much more regular basis than he did have, helping shape that story from the beginning. And that gives me a lot of confidence in the direction we're headed.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to unmake Skeleton Crew. They're not going to unmake, what's the other one, The Acolyte or anything like that. And so, there's just a lot in the news what's going on about a whole bunch of different Disney projects that some are good, some are doing the best that they can. And again, this is just, they're promoting the guy who does stuff that they know works.
Yeah.
And so like the Mangold thing, I mean, even then, we can't wait for that. I can't wait for Daisy Ray's new movie. And so what I really think is that they're going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into these projects that they got to deliver, right?
Yeah, well, and a lot of what this quote confirms to me about at the inception phase of this is along the lines of what you're saying, is that these movies are going to feel more joined together. We talk a lot about what might have caused the controversy surrounding the sequels, and largely, not exclusively, but largely, we've tacked a lot of the burden on the fact that they did not storyboard the saga at all. that they just came up with the next movie after they made the first one, and then the third movie after they made the second one. And they were firing from the hip the whole time for all three movies. They didn't forge deep connections after each film. And in my opinion, and I think in your opinion, that they hampered the success of those films quite a bit. And that now they see that, and they're going to course correct by getting Dave in early to say, we've got the guru, we've got the guy who knows what he's doing, we've got George Lucas's apprentice, we've got George Lucas, the guy who studied under George directly, here to kind of fill us in and keep the train on the tracks.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of these other projects that are coming down the pipe have slightly shifted focus or slightly shifted effort in what was going to happen.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I think that probably is the case. And, we got all three of the movies announced at the same time. We've remarked on this podcast a lot about the potential for connections between these movies, be it Hu Yang, the Sacred Jedi texts, maybe even the threats that present themselves in the Dawn of the Jedi or in the Mandoverse film will re-emerge during the New Jedi Order. Like, there are many ways that they can thread these stories together without them having to be a singular story that you go one into the other.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And like you said with the whole storyboarding thing, this can also kind of segue into, the news that we've talked about many times is, oh, well, this director wants to do a Star Wars movie, and this director wants to do a Star Wars movie, and that's fine as long as it has cohesiveness to it, and we're getting something genuine, not just this guy's interpretation. I'd say if you want to do that, let's have some mega Tales of the Jedi or Visions thing where they're doing these things. That seems kind of dumb it down for these mega directors, but man, if you want to be part of the Star Wars, you got to earn it.
Yeah, you got to play ball. You got to understand what Star Wars is, and you got to fit something in it. You can't just say, this is the setting I want to tell my extremely unique story in that does not fit in with the rules established in the universe or just with the general vibe and feel of the universe. And
and that cost $100 million to make and makes $20 million on the opening day because it's got something weird in it.
And that's the thing, is that we have the chance to have these movies connected, and it's exciting because we can't possibly have these things exist in a vacuum. It's felt like that before. Kenobi, to me, felt like it existed in a vacuum. That it was kind of just a story told in the Star Wars. Felt a lot like Visions. It's a story told in the Star Wars setting, but that it's not, connected in meaningful ways to the story. And as much as I loved Solo, and as much as I did not love The Last Jedi, the connection of the dice between those two films is a small example of what I'm talking about. Because I am not calling for a Marvel endgame level of event where we have this big, cheap shot of all of the Star Wars Avengers together in a movie for the sake of, oh, look at how cool this is. I don't need a money shot in Star Wars. What I need is a universe that has rules and that has guidelines and that has parameters that allow it to evolve and expand in certain directions while keeping the tone and style of what came before it. And I think that putting Dave in this position is going to get us steered in that direction.
Yeah. The only advice I'd have for Dave is he needs to also teach his own prodigy.
Yes,
so
yeah.
That when he's able to hand it off, we get the same level of consistency.
Absolutely. He needs to train an apprentice,
which there's so much opportunity for that. Rick Famuyiwa directed a lot of these. The finale episodes, we've talked about that. That's, there's people out there, man.
Bryce Dallas Howard. I mean, there's a lot of folks that can really learn from Dave and that have already contributed a massive amount to the universe in a positive way. An important quote from Dave here is, "But I do feel I'm trying to help them tell the best story that they want to tell. I need to be a help across the galaxy here, like a part of a Jedi Council almost." So he's a resource for James Mangold and Obaid Chinoy and for Tony Gilroy. I mean, they can use Dave's expertise to mold their stories and tell them in the most cohesive way possible. It's like if you're taking, and this is not to say that these people need painting classes. These are world-class directors. But it's like if you're taking a painting class and the instructor walks by and says, oh, maybe use this shade of purple instead of this shade of purple. Like, it's not they're changing the painting, but they are making suggestions that are going to make it better in the end.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Lots of little stuff going on. I mean, this article is huge.
It's chock full. We are only talking about the first section of like a 6-section article. Yeah. The one thing I'll mention about this is Dave getting named to this promotion is huge for us, for massive Star Wars fans. A lot of people don't know who Dave is, or some people know who Dave is, and they are upset about this news. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention it. I mean, for my best example is my mother-in-law asked me today what we were going to be recording about. And I was like, oh, well, this guy named Dave Filoni got promoted at Lucasfilm. It's a big deal for Colin and I because we think that he's really good. And so hopefully his influence is going to be bigger on these movies. And obviously she'd never heard of him. She's watched all of the live-action Star Wars stuff, but she doesn't know who Dave Filoni is, and most people don't. And so while this is a big deal for us, we have to acknowledge that a lot of people are still in a lurch and may not expect Star Wars to be bouncing back with a Dave Filoni style because they don't know what that means. You know, they don't understand that. And I say bouncing back not to say, oh, like Star Wars has been, you know, just defeated and that it needs a comeback. It's still, people are watching the stuff. Like I said, my mother-in-law, who's a passive Star Wars fan, has seen everything. But for us Uber fans who want to get these Dave Filoni twists and want someone who's well-educated with Star Wars at the helm, it's a much bigger deal for us than it is for most people.
Yeah, and there's problems out there that are not just with Disney and not just with, you know, the whole film industry is being criticized from so many different angles. Mm-hmm. And like, you can't make a comedy movie anymore. Movies aren't what they used to be. Da-da-da-da-da. And some of that stuff is true. Some of that stuff is not. But, I mean, because even this year we had Barbenheimer, right?
Right.
Neither one of those things had anything to do with Disney. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the criticisms can be leveled at those movies for the same reasons. But it's that weekend was the biggest outlier in recent years. That's the exception to the rule that kind of is not the exception to the rule and proves so many different things that good things can still be made. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. And that so tastes are kind of changing. People's movie tastes might be moving away from things like the interconnected universe and Marvel. And they're never going to move away from Star Wars. They're not even going to move away from comic book movies completely. That's not going to happen. But the shift in what movies are drawing people to the theaters is definitely evident.
Right. I mean, here's another thing. We're fresh off this strike. You know, those people hadn't worked for months, from the writers to the actors and so many other people in between as a consequence. And so surely these guys have sat at home, done whatever those creative people do, if you know what I'm saying, and they're probably chomping at the bit to crank out some really cool stories.
Yeah. And, well, look, what I want to say about that also is that we don't know how long Dave has been the CCO like this, because this article was not just about Dave. It's about Ahsoka, and so there's many interviews from the cast in this. They were not allowed to be interviewed. They weren't allowed to promote the show during the strike. Ahsoka came out the whole time during the strike, and we got no promotion from Amon Esfandi or Rosario Dawson or anybody on cast. And so this news could be 2 months old, 3 months old. People in Lucasfilm might have already known about this. They couldn't talk about it because while Dave can deliver interviews and he can talk about things, they wanted to do this giant expose that they did in Vanity Fair that we're talking about, and they couldn't do that until the actors were allowed to speak. So this news could be, Dave's influence could already have been permeating in a larger way than we were aware of before this article came out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so many different aspects to this, too. Like, inside politics at Disney and Lucasfilm, other external factors like one section of this I'm sure we're going to get to is Ray Stevenson's untimely passing.
Yep.
And so, like, what kind of catalyst was that? Where you're sitting down in a room and you're responsible for making Ahsoka season 2. We're like, okay, how do we tackle this problem? You know, I'd love to be a fly on that wall, and you know, what kind of discussions in there that led to whatever they're going to do with that problem, you know.
Yeah.
So fun to think about.
No, it is. And like you said, there's a lot of internal politics. There's some external politics. This announcement did not please everybody. Dave has his detractors. Some people feel that while he has a great home in animation, he has not made the great jump to live action. There's some people who say that, there's too much interconnectedness, that we're getting too many cameos in shows like The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, where Dave has had heavy influence. There are some people who are detracting Dave's writing ability, which is maybe, to me, the most valid one. And that I don't think Dave is a bad writer, but I think that it's clear that Dave is a writer coming from animation. And so he needs to beef up his chops a little bit. We have some friends at the Scare of Scuttlebutt podcast who have made that. We had a conversation with them on Twitter that they were worried about him being named in this position because of his writing chops. But my response to that is twofold. One, George Lucas was not that great of a writer. People have decried the dialogue for the prequels for years. And George Lucas was an amazing world builder. He was an amazing storyteller. And so those things can be overlooked, and Dave is also those things. And two is that a creative executive is not writing all of these shows. Now, Dave's going to write Ahsoka Season 2. Dave's going to write Tales of the Jedi Season 2. But it's not like Dave sat down with his pen and pencil and put dialogue on paper for Andor. He said, hey, maybe you should say this character is speaking to this character in Andor. Or maybe, this should happen on this planet. Or, oh, this is how long it takes to get to this place. Like those kinds of changes. And now he'll be able to guide even more. He'll say, maybe the story should head in this direction because this is what a Jedi is like. Or this is what belief in the Force in this instant manifests itself as. But he's not getting down and he's not writing the dialogue for most of these projects. And so I think if you're worried about Dave's specific writing ability, that's not something you need to worry about in this promotion. Very likely he will probably be writing less in this role because he has more responsibility to do other things now.
Yeah, and especially, since this is a snowball on a mountain type thing, if you ask me. And, because giving him license to do all this, like I said, keep things in the boundaries. And then look where we got Skeleton Crew, The Acolyte, Andor Season 2, and Ahsoka Season 2, and the Mandoverse film, and what's the other one? Season 4 of Mandalorian, right? And I'd still like to see a Book of Boba Fett Season 2, if you ask me.
Yeah, there's more story to be told there. Just because the first season was not super well received, and I went back and rewatched it, and I definitely liked it better on a rewatch than I did Kenobi on a rewatch. I think
that matters, right?
It does. It matters a lot. The watchability of Star Wars, above many other things, must be rewatchable. If it is to last as long as it has lasted, and to go even further into the future, we must have rewatches. And so I hope that the Book of Boba Fett does get a season 2, and that it comes with some tweaks, obviously, but that there's still much more story to tell there.
Yeah, so much. This is just what we know of. What are these other movies going to spawn?
Yeah, there's certainly.
My whole point is like there's going to be so many people involved with these projects that he's going to be able to, he's the one operating the loom. All these other people are feeding the threads in, if you ask me.
Yes, yeah, and we've got, they have a years-long, decades-long plan, and we only get to see that in 2 or 3 year chunks. Like, we only know what's coming out in 2027, maybe 28. But we are going to eventually just get more and more story. They know the story for the next 10 years. They know the story for the next 20 years, perhaps. And Dave has had these concepts in his head for a while. We saw what came to fruition on screen on Ahsoka. We know he had been thinking about at the beginning of Rebels, maybe even during the Clone Wars. And he was thinking, I'm never going to get to do that, but this would be awesome. This is where I would take the story if I got the chance to. And he was given the chance to, and that's where we've gotten the story so far. Speaking of Ahsoka, though, that's what this article's mainly about. It's not just about Dave. It's about Ahsoka. And so they just open it up. Basically, if you didn't get what Ahsoka was about, like if the show's point was lost on you for some reason, Rosario Dawson takes a second to really break it down, because the show I don't know if you can hear this siren, Colin, but I bet our listeners can hear this siren. There's a super loud siren outside this house. Anyways, Rosario Dawson said that this was about Ahsoka being, and this is paraphrasing, Ahsoka's journey allowed her to take the step to overcome the baggage that she was given by, the man who she most respected, falling to the dark side. Like, when the master that she had this built-up expectation for did not live up to that expectation, how does she grapple with that? And that was the real point of the self-titled Ahsoka show. And so, when Rosario Dawson breaks it down like that, that goal was absolutely accomplished. Like, they delivered on that very, very easily.
Yeah, and for me, that was kind of obvious with the World Between Worlds scenes, right?
I agree too. But it could have been lost on some folks. It was lost on some folks. I mean, I saw people after the show had completely wrapped up on Twitter saying, what the heck was this even about? And it's like, you got to have a little bit of media literacy, man. You just got to be able to read. Yeah. You can't be spoon-fed what this is about. But if you need to be spoon-fed what this is about, Rosario Dawson tells you in the Vanity Fair article.
Well, I mean, and this is such a classic fiction trope, is even any level of storytelling is growth of the character. And somebody getting over Darth Vader being a mass murderer and the failures of the past is quite a big one.
Yeah, that's something that you're going to have to work through. Takes a little bit more than a day in therapy to get through that.
It's more than that. Just worrying about if you're going to, exactly like Balin Skull said, and all this stuff in the show. Are you going to you're going to turn out just like your old master or something like that? Basically, as an insult.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of her old master, I really liked this Vanity Fair piece. So I don't always like when Star Wars does spreads in Vanity Fair and The Hollywood Reporter. Sometimes I just don't think the reporters have done their due diligence and that they're not asking good questions or that we're not getting good quotes. Well, that's not the case here. I loved this article, and the main reason I loved the article is because they spent the right amount of time lauding and respecting the fact that Hayden Christensen has made his big return as Anakin Skywalker. I know we got him in Kenobi, but this was like the real deal. Like, I'm not saying it's not the real deal because I didn't like Kenobi that much, which I don't want that to be the case, but we didn't get a whole lot of Anakin in Kenobi. We just got a couple flashback scenes of a little bit of dialogue, and we got Hayden as Vader in that, and he did an exceptional job. But in Ahsoka is where we first really got Hayden back as Anakin, and he delivered a lot of lines in character as Anakin and shared the growth that character's had throughout the original trilogy. And we saw that impact the character. And so Vanity Fair spent a good amount of time teasing that out in this article, and so I thought it was a great article. I'd like to read Christensen's quotes about the World Between Worlds scenes real quick, because it was so hotly debated between everybody. I mean, we made some definitive statements that I still stand behind, that the World Between Worlds is part of the force between, realms and dimensions, that this is the same space that Force Ghosts occupy, but that Force Ghosts occupy the space all between things, that this is really just, as you've put it really, really succinctly and eloquently, it's the room of requirement for Star Wars, and that when a character needs to have these on-screen visions and moments, it happens there. And we've postulated about how Luke probably did that in the cave on Dagobah. But Hayden Christensen touches on this, and the debates that sparked around this, and so I'm going to read that quote from him. Inevitably, the audience has to question what it is they're watching. Is this really the World Between Worlds? What is the World Between Worlds? Is this actually the spirit of Anakin Skywalker, or is this all Ahsoka's subconscious? And we're just going down the yellow brick road as she's drowning and fighting for her life? I think that the episode provides a few really good clues, but it doesn't spell it out for you.
Yeah, so this here is just really good writing. And a lot of people criticize that, and I actually think that's a good thing. People need to be able to say the wrong thing so they can be criticized too. And discussion is, and that's why you listen to podcasts and listen to different podcasts and tune into us and all these other things. And so that quote you just read spells it out exactly. If you're having to leave these breadcrumbs everywhere and tell people exactly what's going on, well, then you've lost the magic. And we all know what Star Wars and Disney's all about, is creating that magic.
Yeah, it's not exciting if you don't have something to scratch your head about. I mean, this ignited a bunch of debate, and I'm not saying we're definitively right on this. I just think we are. And Dave obviously knows the answers to this. But as we saw with the Mortis arc in Season 3 of the Clone Wars, he's not going to reveal those answers. Maybe ever. because he wants people to talk about them and debate them, and that's what Star Wars is about. I mean, if Star Wars didn't cause disagreements and arguments about what's the point or what even happens on screen, then it wouldn't be the franchise that has endeared itself to us and to millions of other people.
Yeah, I mean, and gosh, I'm so glad we got this article, like you said, and they did do a really good job, because getting all these insights, even said it's just like peeling back layers or something. We're not getting to look at the heart of the whole thing, but just something for us to talk about is very fun.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to say that Dave goes on just a little bit after this to talk about how he wants to make it clear he is not retelling George's story, that George had the first and the final word on Anakin Skywalker, and that seeing Anakin in this moment is not meant for us to really try and read anything into Anakin's character, right? Like we know
same with the Obi-Wan
that
show,
story.
kinda.
Yeah, it is the same with the Obi-Wan show. This is not about Anakin. We have 6 movies about him. We have his story, and so what you see, the flashes between him and Vader, the anger that he expresses as a Force ghost, these are all important for Ahsoka. This is her moment. This is about how she is going to grapple with the events of the past 25 years. And so to see Anakin doing some things on screen in Ahsoka, we have to think about, this is not Dave trying to rewrite George's story or trying to write on top of George's story and give some perspective on Anakin that we might not have had. Dave wants to make it very clear, and he does make it very clear in this article. This is about Ahsoka. This is about her experiences, and this is about her relationship with Anakin Skywalker. This is not our relationship or his perspective or anything like that with Anakin. And that was an important thing to say, and that pays the due respect to George necessary that I think would, if we tried to get some new layer of nuance added to Anakin's character, it could only possibly damage the original 6 films.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100%. I agree with what Dave says 100%. But it seems to me, and it's like on the Scuttlebutt podcast that we're on, there's so much demand for Vader. And I would say there's so much demand for Anakin's version of Darth Vader. So you think there's anything there? I mean, because I don't want there to be literally, but a devil's advocate, heck yeah, I'd love, my tried and true answer is go pick up the comic books. but still,
Right,
I can't,
right.
There's a base inside of me that says, I want more of this.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously Star Wars is film. I love the books. I have hundreds of the books. I love the comics. But Star Wars is film. First, it's film before it's TV. And so if you want to get more Vader action, which a lot of people want, especially casual Star Wars fans, I mean, there is no more Star Wars character than Darth Vader. I mean, it's about him. That's what it's about. No matter the story you tell in Star Wars, you can think it's completely divorced from Anakin or Darth Vader. It's not. It just isn't. It can't be. There's no way it is.
At Disney World, he's the primary character that people go to see.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's because he's the greatest villain of all time. And so it's obviously natural for people to want more story and for people to want to see him doing badass things on screen. Obviously that's the case. But the issue there is that every time you put him on screen, you run the risk of diluting the character. You run the risk of messing the character up in some way, especially if you're trying to add story layers on top of the character. Now, is that to say it can't be done? No. And is that to say they're never going to do it? Almost certainly not. I mean, we're definitely going to get Vader on screen again. And the times that they've done it have been pretty exceptional. In Kenobi, all of the Vader stuff I thought was really good. That was one of the highlights of the series, is they did a good job. They did a really good job of teasing out their relationships. Obviously, in Rogue One, it was just a scene of him being a badass. There was no character development for Vader whatsoever, and that's fine. There didn't need to be any character development for him here. But every time they get around in the chamber to go fire off a Vader bullet, they run the risk of it blowing up in their face.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
So we keep talking through the article. One of the things about Anakin that is the other side of the coin for Ahsoka is she's having to grapple with the past. She's also having to grapple with the present and the future because her apprentice Sabine, and one of the reasons that we learn at the very end of the show that she had issues with training Sabine is because Sabine's very similar to Anakin Skywalker. Her fire and her passion are extremely similar, and I didn't make that connection until the last episode, but it's clear. Anakin could have been a Mandalorian in another life, And so seeing Ahsoka have to grapple with training her own apprentice, who she's scared falling to the dark side, was another important aspect of this show that the actors touch on in this article.
Yeah. For me, I guess I'm having a fond memory. It's probably one of my shortcomings is I kind of thought that was obvious. But that surely has to be, I'm misremembering that because, like you said, it wasn't until the end. But
yeah, I mean, we didn't know anything about why Ahsoka left Sabine or anything like that. It just wasn't, we didn't really, until they reconciled, we didn't know the exact answer.
Well, yeah, it was just speculation, but, I mean, we know exactly who Sabine was, and they had all this animus at the start, but we shouldn't be even discussing that, but that's not the topic. But seriously, though, it was really good on screen to have that. I think they did such a good job in the show revealing that. I mean, because like you said, and I agree, it was just speculation. And not only that, but Sabine overcame that stuff.
Yeah,
absolutely. All that, and repaired that relationship. You know, Ahsoka had this repair of her relationship with Anakin and was able to, be the good Jedi Master.
Right.
And carry it on to her Padawan.
In the 5th episode of the series, Anakin and her have that world between worlds conversation where he makes it very clear that a person is not the sum of the bad deeds that they've done. I mean, that's an important lesson for real life that everyone has to learn at some point, because it is obviously ties into forgiveness and the importance of forgiveness. And so when you take Sabine has not always done great things. We know about her checkered past and helping the Empire and building that weapon to destroy Mandalore. And then you see her fiery passion and her what is certainly her distraught and anger at the Empire destroying Mandalore. Not even during the war, but in retaliation for Palpatine's death as part of Operation Cinder will no doubt inflame her. And so Ahsoka's fears are warranted, but we have to see those scenes of her working them through with Anakin for her to understand that a person is not a sum of their bad deeds, or that the risk of a person not living up to expectations is not a worthy reason to not support them or help them. And so Natasha Leo Bordizzo, who plays Sabine, says as much in this article. And so it's just good to see from the outset that these actors, from these interviews, it really makes me feel like these actors all have a very good understanding of their characters.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, even if they weren't on the screen much, Manis Fondi, right?
Mm-hmm,
I think he did a phenomenal job portraying Ezra.
Yeah. I think, there's been a lot, at this point, there's been more than 20 live action or animation to live action transitions in Star Wars. And I remember way back when we only had one. But now that we've had so many, I still think Amanis Fondi may be the best one. I think he may be the single best translation from animation to live action.
Yeah, and especially so much compared to the others, right? I mean, Sabine and Ahsoka even. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one.
No, yeah, I mean, they're good adaptations, but they're adaptations. I mean, Ezra just feels like he's straight off the animated screen. And then you have people like the Grand Inquisitor. It's just like, come on, man. What's going on here? This was not, I did not expect this episode to turn into the crap on Kenobi episode, but it started to get that way with me.
That's a low-hanging fruit. So
it is, yeah. So the end of the article, no doubt, stuck out to you. It stuck out to me. Is the time they spend talking about Ray Stevenson and his passing, and how Dave readily admits it's going to be hard moving forward without Ray. Not just emotionally, and not just for the cast of him being gone, but literally of everything that he brought to the character, the gravitas, the way he interpreted the character. All of this is pointing to the fact that they don't know how to move forward without Ray. And that's concerning, but I'm not near as concerned because they're readily admitting that it's going to take some time for them to find the perfect solution, or the best solution on how to move this story forward and this character forward without Ray.
I don't know if it was this article or another one I read, but one thing that I was remarked upon was how much he cared for this character and the story, and how Ray Stevenson saw this guy as the good guy, and Dave Filoni had to remind him, like, hey, you're the bad guy here. You're the villain. And so
yeah, it is this article. He does that, just him talking with Ray about that and how Ray really saw himself in that role as, I don't think that I'm the bad guy, was super important because that's exactly how the character felt delivered, and that's what made him so compelling, was his grayness. Now, I always talk about the fact.
That's what makes most villains compelling, is that they think they're doing a good thing.
I'd say you're right. Makes most of them. But Palpatine, Vader, they're just straight up bad guys. I mean, Vader at the very end becomes good again, but they're just straight out bad guys. And so almost always, I like my Star Wars to be black and white. I think, especially because Star Wars is first and foremost for kids, that it needs to have black and white morality, because there are a lot of grays in morality in life. Not all morality in life is gray, though. There are black and whites, and people need to be able to recognize those as much as they need to be able to recognize the grays. And so when you get a gray character like Baylan in the show, if he's good, if he has this gravitas to him, and if he has this really compelling, draw you in, want to know more mystery surrounding him, that's when they're the most successful. And so gray has its place in Star Wars. Ray Stevenson proved that. I'm just excited, or I'm just happy that we got such a good entry into this is a gray villain in Star Wars.
Yeah, and if I had to guess, the Ray Stevenson's Baylan Skoll arc is, if you had to rank of the things that you wanted to see the most next, a majority of people would say that whatever that arc is going to be is what people want to see the most.
Yeah,
of course,
absolutely.
Thrawn and what Ahsoka does and how they get back to the galaxy, that's going to be up there too. But I most want to know what happens with Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati.
What could be earth-shaking, what I think could get a lot more animated viewers for Star Wars in short order, would be if when Tales of the Jedi Season 2 releases, 3 of those episodes are about Baylan Skoll and his time in the Jedi Order. I think that would be a way, 45 minutes to tell the guy's backstory. Show us 2 episodes of him fighting in Clone Wars battles, him just like Dooku, slowly losing faith in the Order in some way, and then the last episode can be his Order 66 execution, like when that all went down and how he got away. And I think that would be very, very welcome by a lot of fans. And I hope that we get something like that. Because Lucasfilm would be smart to do something like that because the guy's so popular. Everybody loved him. I mean, that was one of the most resounding parts about the Ahsoka show, is everybody loved Baylan Skoll and Ray Stevenson. And Dave also talks about that in the article. That he was so endeared to see how much people loved the character, and he wished that Ray was around to get to see how much people loved him because of how much he would eat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's
and
disappointing.
Hayden's getting that now, so it's cool to see that happen, too.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. So, like I said, Dave acknowledges that they don't know what they're going to do with Ray Stevenson's passing. He said, obviously, there's a story there. We're in a wait-and-see pattern at this moment, but I'm glad the conversation is about Ray and how great he was. And then he goes into talking about how he had that debate with Ray about, you're the villain, and he's like, no, I don't think so. The article wraps up, though, with a little bit of mystery, which is kind of, I don't know. There's definitely a reason that they're doing it, whether it's financial or because of something with the stakeholders or because Bob Iger told them to hold it or whatever. They didn't say that there's a season 2, but come on. Everybody knows there's a season 2 coming. It is very clearly on the way, and I thought this article would have been a really good way to announce that, but maybe they just want to make it a bigger deal. But I expect it next year. There's not a celebration next year, so they're going to have to announce it at some other big convention, maybe D23 or Comic-Con or New York Comic-Con or something like that, but we know season 2 is coming.
Yep. Yeah, I thought I saw an article that said it was, but you see so much stuff on the internet that just speculation or clickbait, whatever. You're
right. But I don't think it's been confirmed yet, but we'll see. So there's another news article that we want to talk about. We spent plenty of time talking about the Vanity Fair one. This one's going to tie into that conversation, though. We're going to use the Vanity Fair piece to really frame the rest of our conversations for this episode. The article comes from thedirect.com, and it's about the upcoming 5 TV shows confirmed for 2024, which, when I read that headline, I was super confused. When I got into the article, my memory was jogged, and I was like, oh, of course it's 5. But when you read that, you're like, we're getting 5 Star Wars TV shows next year, even after the strike. And so far, from all indications, yes. I think one of these is maybe tenuously placed on this list, that the last confirmed time was 2024. We haven't gotten a reconfirmation since the strike, and it's not finished yet. We know it's not finished yet, and so 2024 may be wishful thinking. But we'll get into that. The first TV show confirmed in the article is one that we know Dave has been working on pretty heavily. He hadn't been writing it like Ahsoka, but he's certainly been involved because it's in that Mandoverse that he and Jon Favreau have been building with The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, their other projects. And it's Skeleton Crew, which is the most likeliest candidate for the Star Wars we're going to get first next year.
Yeah, it was supposed to come out this year. We should have been doing podcast episodes about that. But
we would certainly, right now, I guarantee you, we would be in talking about Skeleton Crew if everything had been on track. It'd probably be like 3rd or 4th episode, right this second.
Yeah, and I think the strikes had the most to do with that. They want the actors out there promoting this thing, and they couldn't do that. So now that this is over, I bet they're spinning up all the plans to do all the... I mean, any day now we're expecting a trailer or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Probably press meetings and all this other stuff.
Absolutely.
We're fixing to get a lot of it.
Well, because, Skeleton Crew, the name doesn't really tell you much, and people don't know a whole lot about this. And when you have a big name like Jude Law, you want him out there promoting your show. I mean, that's one of the reasons you even sign an actor like that, is for the promotional value that's going to come from them promoting your show. And so it's understandable that they waited. I mean, Ahsoka could stand on its own a little bit in that it had big actors, and it's a shame that they didn't get to promote the show. But Ahsoka can promote itself by virtue of the name alone, and that just isn't the case with Skeleton Crew. And so I get why they waited, and now, like you said, we're expecting a trailer any day. Certainly it'll come before the end of the year. I mean, that's a prediction, but it's a pretty educated prediction, and so I'm excited for it. We've talked a lot about the show. Go ahead.
Technically, there is a trailer out there, but the only people who've seen it are the Star Wars Celebration attendees and attendees who illegally recorded and leaked it.
Right, exactly. People
before they got smashed off the internet.
People who have seen it on Reddit leaks, and, no way we saw that. There's absolutely no chance. We've talked about the show a number of times on here. It's going to be Amblin-like. It's going to follow kids. It's not necessarily for kids. It's set in another galaxy, Peridia. But it's going to follow an unknown Jedi played by Jude Law. And it's, the closer we get to the unknown release date, we don't know when it's coming out, but we know we're getting closer. I get more excited, and I get more confident in the show. And I still am going to stand by my prediction from a few months ago that you derided, that I think it's going to be a sleeper hit similar to Andor. It is not going to be like Andor in tone, and it's probably not going to be this award catch-all like Andor was. But I do think that people are sleeping on Skeleton Crew, and when people have low expectations, Star Wars can really blow them away.
Yeah, you're right about that.
So the next show is maybe the one that we can expect Dave to have had the smallest hand in. You've already mentioned it. It's the Acolyte. It's, 100 years before the Phantom Menace. And I only suggest that he might have had a smaller hand in this project because it wrapped filming before his promotion, from what we can assume. It wrapped filming just a little bit before the strikes started. And so I just don't think that he possibly could have had an outsized influence on that show because he probably wasn't in this position yet. And he was working diligently on Ahsoka when they were filming The Acolyte. And so he probably just wouldn't have had the time to be heavily involved. And he no doubt in his capacity in his other role was able to go in and say, tweak this, do this. This is what the Jedi Council would be like at this time, yada, yada, yada. But he probably did not have the opportunity to really guide that story.
Yeah, and gosh, this is probably one of the ones I'm looking forward to the most.
You and everybody else, I think. Yeah, I think it's the most anticipated one. I think it's the most anticipated one of next year.
Yeah, it really is. For me, it's at least a tie between Andor, but depending on who I'm talking to or how I feel that day, I'm probably more excited for Andor season 2. But if we were able to find out more about this show too, I'm sure that would change. Again, I think the only information we've, like a trailer or anything, is from Celebration that's been leaked or something like that, or just scuttlebutt online here and there. But, yeah, haven't seen all this dark side stuff and what it could spawn is really enticing.
Yeah, I mean, people have been demanding a Darksider-centered project for a long time. And so that's why I say it probably the most anticipated one of next year's, because of that. In that there's so many people that is what they have wanted forever, is to get this Darksider-centered story. And Acolyte is going to deliver that. If nothing else, it's going to deliver that. So
yeah.
You mentioned
pumped for this.
You mentioned the next project on the list. Andor Season 2 is a project that, Dave's also probably going to have a limited input on. But it'll probably be a larger input than he did on Season 1, because we can expect Season 2 to have some tie-in with Rebels, which was Dave's baby. I mean, if you look at set-leaked photos from Andor Season 2, and this is spoilers, if you don't want anything to know about Andor Season 2, then don't listen to the next 30 seconds of the podcast. But the pictures that have been out there that people have seen are of Cassian escorting Mon Mothma as she's running from the Empire, as she just made her declaration that she is, against Palpatine, against the Empire, and Cassian's helping her escape. Well, we know in a Rebels episode that they're the ones who pick her up. Obviously, we don't see Cassian on screen, but she is ship docked with the Ghost, and it can probably be assumed that Cassian's in that ship. And so, just connections, that's not the only connections, certainly, with Rebels that they're going to have, but just connections with like that would lend to the fact that they're going to need Dave around a little more, just to make sure that the story stays cohesive.
Yeah, and I'm so excited for scenes like that. And, we got some of the most visually stunning scenes in Andor Season 1. And I'm not saying they should attempt to top that, but what are they going to do to meet those expectations?
Oh, I hope they do top it. I mean, all the practical effects and all of the filming on location. I love the volume. I think Jon Favreau's a master of it. But it does not always lend itself a lot. Sometimes it can feel really confined or really cheap when someone's using the volume and they don't know how to use it. And so the fact that Andor was just shot on location, it looked beautiful. It looked gorgeous, and I really do think that they're going to be able to top the visuals. And I hope that they do, and I'm excited to see what they do. It's my most anticipated show, for sure. Like you said, you're kind of between Andor and the Acolyte. I'm super excited for the Acolyte, but on no day out of the 365 of the year am I going to wake up and not be most excited for Andor Season 2. The next story that we have, or not the next story, sorry, the next TV show that we have to talk about is the first animated project on the list. We know that The Bad Batch has been confirmed for a third and final season. The Bad Batch are characters that Dave created alongside George. They're the brainchildren of George and Dave. And really, they're one of the last vestiges of George's direct hand on Star Wars in the Disney era. I mean, The Bad Batch is directly from George's mind, and so it has a special place among a lot of people's hearts. And Dave does not have a whole lot to do with the day-to-day production of the show, but the fact that those are his characters, I'm certain that he was in the room as they're determining how they're going to close out that story.
Yeah, and probably making a decision to send Tech on his way, and the creation of Omega. And hey, I'm invested in all of these characters. I kind of, if this is I kind of hope they make an evolution into the Mandoverse with one of these people in here. Maybe Omega's in there or something. That's kind of wishful thinking, I bet, because these people have their own stories, and usually clones, they're kind of wrapped up at some point, right? Because they don't live that long. But yeah,
it's an exciting story.
I love Bad Batch. I really do.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking really, really forward to it. And so I just think that eventually when that wraps up, and we don't know when, this article says it's confirmed for 2024. I believe them, but we haven't heard anything about the show. And, Season 2 kept getting pushed back. Oh, it's supposed to come now. Oh, it's going to come then, blah, 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 blah. I hope that same thing doesn't happen to Season 3, but it absolutely could. And so I hope we get it next year.
And the other thing I want to know, because... what is it? We had Clone Wars, and this is a spin-off of that, and we have the Young Jedi Adventures, But is there going to be any other animation past that isn't some sort of one-off like the other thing we're fixing to talk about, or Visions or something like that? Because animation is just fun. You have a little bit more. The creators have a little bit more leeway.
You can crank out a lot of stories. It's easier to be sillier on animation. Like there's definitely a reason for animation to stick around in Star Wars. I agree with you.
So there's a lot of TV show talk, there's a lot of movie talk, but we don't hear anything about new animation or animation come down the pipe outside of one-off Visions and Tales and this and that.
Yeah, and what I'll say is that as much as I love the Clone Wars and Tales of the Jedi and Bad Batch, one, I'm excited that Bad Batch was 3 seasons. I didn't want it to be open-ended. I really liked that it was telling a uniform story. We got a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we know the path. As I keep saying, obviously I like storytelling like that. I get super worried when it's just, we made this and we're going to see what happens next season, or we're going to see what happens in the next movie. I really like when they say, we know the story. Like Andor with its 2 seasons. Tony Gilroy said, that's what we need to tell this story. We need the 2 seasons. And so far it's been great. But to talk about Bad Batch and the fact that I'm happy about a season 3, I'm also happy and hopefully happy. There's no news on this, like you've said, but that when we get the newest animated project, I hope we move away from the animation style. Not that I don't love the Clone Wars animation, because I really do. We're about to have 12 seasons of TV just with that one animation style. And we saw with Rebels...
Are you out to make people mad?
We saw with Rebels, with Resistance, new animation styles. And, people complained about the Rebels animation style, and I'd say probably the Clone Wars animation style is better than the Rebels one, but I like the difference. I want a different style. This is a good style for the era. If we ever come back to the era for more animation, maybe use the same style, but I would love to see an evolution of style, because it's been 12 seasons, guys. Can we get something else? And it is cool, though, seeing how they pioneer the animation, because it looks so gorgeous and so crisp in Bad Batch Season 2, in Tales of the Jedi Season 1. And like I said, Cass and I have been rewatching the Clone Wars. When you watch those first few episodes of the Clone Wars, you're like, holy crap, this is bad. Not that the story's bad, but that the animation has just come so far. It didn't even seem bad in 2008. I thought it was pretty good in 2008. But now, in 2023, when I get to see the Bad Batch Season 2, it is night and day. It honestly just looks like a different animation style. It's come so far.
Yeah, it really has. The only other thing I want to add, like you said, I too am glad Bad Batch is only going to be 3 seasons. I think if you were to have it open-ended, like you said, it would be almost literally the A-Team in space. I mean, because it'd be just escaped convicts.
Right.
Going to do mercenary things.
And that's essentially what they are.
Repetitive.
That's how they feel like.
Yeah, it is, but they got a serialized aspect that makes it fun, and
they
got a kid involved that they're protecting. It's fun.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree. So you mentioned it a little bit, but the last show we're going to talk about is, funnily enough, probably the show that I think Dave has the most influence on. I think probably more than Ahsoka, and maybe even more than Rebels. And it's getting a 2nd season, and it's Tales of the Jedi, which is, I mean, again, obviously Rebels is Dave's baby, Ahsoka is Dave's baby. This is like wholly his project. Other than the animators that sit down and animate what he told them to, it's all him. He just wrote these stories down. The first season were just notes that he made on airplane rides of, oh, this would be cool, oh, this would be neat. A story about Ahsoka, a story about Dooku. He does 3 different episodes for Dooku and Ahsoka in the first season, and I loved the initial release a lot, especially the episodes that humanized and deepened Dooku. They were some top-notch Star Wars for me. I mean, they're some of the best Star Wars that I'd seen in a long time. And so I'm really excited for the 2nd season.
Yeah, this season 2 is just going to add to those exact things. I mean, and even know what we're going to get with this thing, season 2? Or is it all just speculation?
All speculation. We have, and it's completely unfounded speculation. I mean, there's, Dave's tipped no hands. There's no indication on who it could be about. I mean, obviously there may be some educated guesses, but we don't really know anything. As I said, I'd love to see it about Balin, But I'd love to see it leave the era. I'd like to see Tales of the Jedi about Luke. I'd like to see Tales of the Jedi about Ben Solo. I'd like to see Tales of the Jedi set in the High Republic. And I'd still like to see Tales of the Jedi set in the prequel era. I'd like to see Plo Koon Tales of the Jedi. Or Qui-Gon would be really cool.
Or what everybody else wants, Barriss Offee, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or Barriss. I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, seeing Barriss's fall would be super interesting because we don't really see that. We see her benevolent on screen in season 2, and we see her on evil on screen in season 5, and that's not a problem. It's not like they have to flesh out every single thing, but she'd be a really compelling one to write and an appropriate one for Dave to jump in on. But I'm excited, man. It really will. They're no doubt going to be meaningful. And I think this is the only one that I'm comfortable predicting. I bet it comes out on May 4th. That's just my assumption, but they all drop at once. It's just a really good way to celebrate Star Wars, and people would be excited for a new Star Wars show to get to dive into. And when you put them all together, they're basically the length of a movie, maybe a little bit shorter, and so it's just an easy way for people to sit down and binge watch all of those.
Yeah. I know where I'll be May 4th if that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I rewatch those all the time too. I watch the Dooku one like maybe once a month. It's kind of bad. Like but dude, I get super, like, it is so interesting to me, his character progression and how in the Clone Wars TV show, he's really one-dimensional. I mean, they give Dooku no character dimension, even all the way up until the last seasons. There's really not much in the way his character is. He's just bad guy. But the Tales of the Jedi stuff just made him such a compelling character. Dooku's always been one of my favorite Sith. That episode absolutely made him my number one favorite Sith.
Yeah, he's cool. The whole thing. How he got to and don't rely just on visions. Go read some of the books he's in. It's way neat.
Yes, Tales of the Jedi. But yes, absolutely. I mean,
yeah,
he's all over. I mean,
too many out there. My brain gets confused.
No worries. He has that audiobook, Dooku Jedi Lost, which recounts a lot of his falling, and does not conflict with the show. It was really good too. I encourage anybody to go listen to that one. So from this article, we can understand a lot about what's coming, but there's almost as much to read into what's not coming, because notably absent from the list. And again, the direct is just kind of, this is more of like a coalescing article. They didn't get some kind of exclusive with Disney and interview them about all this stuff. They're really just saying, this is what we've heard, and they're aggregating all the information. But not on the list, and has been absent for a long time, is confirmation of a third season of Visions, which I don't think we're ever going to get. Maybe not ever, but we're not going to get it anytime soon, because I really think that was part of Bob Iger's cuts when he came in and said, this is too artistic. What are we making this for? It's not set in the universe. It's probably, I don't know what kind of viewer numbers Vision season 1 and 2 had. I liked them, but it can't have been crazy high. And so there's just a lot there that, again, they're really artistic, and that's not what Bob Iger's going for. Bob Iger's going to make money right now.
Right, yeah, and those things probably cost so much to make. It's fun. I mean, we talked about it a lot. I like having those hyper-creative people make their own stories, but they need to be winners also, and some of those just weren't.
Yeah, I mean, season. in both seasons, there are just stinkers there. And everybody, what's always super interesting to me is everybody's got way, way variable definitions of what is a stinker and what isn't in Visions. It's like, your opinion on The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker can be divisive, and it can be nuanced, but really there's only two positions. You liked it or you didn't like it, regardless of the reasons. When you get down into it, the reasons can be innumerable. Everybody has a different reason for why they loved The Last Jedi or didn't like The Last Jedi. But for Visions, it's like you throw a dart at a wall, and a random person is going to have a different rating of every single episode. And there's pretty much, in my talking about these seasons with people, I've never found a person who was the same as the next guy. Like, oh yeah, I really liked these 4 episodes and I hated these 4 episodes. Another guy doesn't walk up and go, me too, that's exactly what I thought. They don't overlap at all. And so Visions is just so artistic and so variable, and it's not Star Wars, but so different from conventional Star Wars that it's really difficult to justify creating something like that when you're trying to make something that's going to be well received by general audiences.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to. I hope they make more Visions, but I think you're right. I don't know when we're going to see it.
Yeah, it'll be a while. I think it'll certainly be a little while. So we have another news article to talk about, and this article came out 2 days ago, so around the same time as Vanity Fair piece. This one was also a really big exclusive interview. This one comes from Collider, and it was an exclusive interview with Daisy Ridley regarding her upcoming Star Wars movie. You know, we call it the Rey movie, the new Jedi Order movie. Doesn't have a name yet, but she's talking about it. And this article made me more excited than I already was, and I was already pretty excited about this movie. I'm ready to see the continuation of the story. I'm ready to see something happen after The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, me too. We've had long discussions about this. The part of me wants to say it's long overdue. That's the irrational side of me, because the rational side of me says that they need to take their time to weave this into gold, right? Mm-hmm. And they need to take their time on this to do it right. I want to be there in a packed theater on opening day, shoulder to shoulder with you and all of our other friends, and join with my whatever Star Wars themed bucket of popcorn and really enjoying this thing.
Right. I'm ready for the excitement. I am ready for Star Wars to get back in the theaters, and I think that's contributing a lot to my excitement, is that no matter what this movie is about, we're finally getting Star Wars back on the big screen. And I say finally like we didn't wait years and years and years between the originals and the prequels, or years and years and years between the prequels and the sequels. But I'm still just super stoked to finally be getting it on screen. The quotes from the article are really interesting from Daisy Ridley. I'm gonna use this one because it's probably the one that's going to give us the most to talk about. Here's what Daisy Ridley had to say about the movie. I know the storyline for one film. That's not to say that that's all it is, but that's what I was told about. And I imagine it will be the next film, I think. I mean, again, I don't know, post-strikes and everything, how quickly everything will start up again. But yes, so far, I know the story of one film, and I think people will be very excited. And so what we can glean from this quote is two things. One, that the Rey film's probably the next one we're getting. Before Mandoverse, before James Mangold, which is what we've predicted, what a lot of people have predicted. It's the most likely. I mean, they put her on stage. It seems like it's the one that's farthest along. But the second, way more interesting thing is she says the storyline for one film. And she may have let something slip there, but I have a question for you. Is this in reference to the Mandoverse and the Dawn of the Jedi being the other films that she very likely would not be a part of? Or is this confirming that they're talking to her that the new Jedi Order film may be the first in new Rey movies? Not a new trilogy, maybe, or maybe it is a new trilogy. Not a new series, maybe, or maybe it is a new series. But new movies with Rey and the sequel characters and happening past The Rise of Skywalker.
Man, I'm so scared to tread those waters of speculation like that, because, like I said, we're in this valley right now, and they'd have to really deliver on whatever movie. I want there to be more trilogies. I want there to be more this and that, but they got to deliver. We don't need some sort of weird. Well, and I guess with Filoni, like we talked about, we'll probably get that, right?
Right. Well, if Dave is steering the ship and he's saying this is, how to make this more cohesive, more interconnected, and, we say, it was a little shaky with the sequels, and now they need to definitely, when they get back to the big screen, it's got to be a home run, and I don't disagree, but they can't go out there and say, we're going to try one movie and see if people like it, and then maybe we'll do two more, because that's nearly the same thing that we talked about at the top of the show may have been one of the biggest problems with the controversy surrounding the sequels, is that they didn't have it planned out. And so they've either got to go full bore, we're going to plan this thing out, it's going to be 3 movies, they're going to be together, we know what the first movie's going to do, the second movie's going to do, and the third movie's going to do. Or they got to say this is one movie, it wraps up beginning to end. If people want a sequel, cool, it's not going to be some sequel that was set up in the first movie, because that's just setting themselves up for failure once again by not storyboarding properly. And leaving loose ends at the end to maybe be picked up is not the right way to do it, in my opinion.
Right.
I'm also really excited about the fact that this article came out the same time as Dave's announcement, because of what you said, the way that he's going to have this guiding hand across these films. I hope that that's the case, at least.
Yeah. There's another quote on here. She said, I'm waiting to read the script because obviously I don't have any other updates. It's not what I expected, but I'm very excited. So I got to kind of say this gives me just a tad bit of pause because I'm harkening back to the memories. You know, have you seen those montage of Mark Hamill talking about The Last Jedi? I think it's real easy to fall into something that this one sentence is not what I expected, but I'm excited is something that smacks of that same Mark Hamill attitude that he had promoting The Last Jedi.
That's certainly true, and Mark has been pretty vocal about
I'm just a tad bit worried about that, but
that's absolutely true. Mark's been pretty vocal about how he felt about The Last Jedi, and how he didn't really feel good about the way that Luke's character was handled. I'll say a couple things about it, though, is that Daisy has been Rey much shorter than Mark had been Luke, and so Mark's expectations are much more, I don't want to say grounded, but much more set in stone than Daisy's expectations, right? She's still getting to know her character. Rey has only existed for 8 years. And so there's a difference there in amount of time. And then there's also a difference this is not between Mark and Daisy. This is just, anybody, especially actors in general. Most actors are not like diehard fans of what they're in, right? Like they are very appreciative, and it's super cool to be in a Star Wars movie. They probably watched Star Wars as a kid, but they're not, they're not reading the books. They're not playing the video games or whatever like we are. And so when their expectations could just be, oh, I didn't realize that this thing was in the Star Wars universe, or, oh, how does this fit into Star Wars? Whereas for us, it could be old hat. It could already be a part of Star Wars or something like that. I mean, the place that my mind jumped to, which was, I posted it on Twitter and it was a joke. Not everybody realized it was a joke, but it was a joke, was that she's saying that because she hasn't read the Yuzan Vong books. She hadn't read the New Jedi Order trilogy yet, the New Jedi Order series. Possible. As soon as she does, she'll understand everything, and that's why she won't be surprised. And I don't think the Yuzan Vong are going to be the villains or anything in this, but that's just the same. That's illustrating the same point: is that there could be things in the Star Wars universe that surprise Daisy because she's not aware of them, but that are old hat for us, or that makes sense, or that they're just taking it in a direction she didn't expect, but her expectations are limited because she's not as familiar with the material. And this is not to say, oh, she doesn't know anything about Star Wars. That's ridiculous. She's in 3 of the movies. She obviously knows plenty about Star Wars, but it's not unheard of for an actor to be caught off guard by something like that.
Yeah, you're right. Man, building off one little thing you mentioned, if I were an actor, I doubt I could watch any movie I was in.
Right. It's like you don't listen to the podcast, right? It's like that.
Right. Yeah, I can't stand the sound of my own voice. I feel weird.
Yeah, and I think there are famous actors who do that. I'm drawing a blank. There's a really big one that he doesn't watch anything he's in. Never been to a premiere of his or anything. I think he might have been in the MCU. But yeah, there are some big actors who've been acting for a long time that are like that too.
Yeah, I don't want to be an actor. I'd hate to miss out on that joy of being part of those, whatever it is,
Yeah. No, I totally get you. So, Colin, our last news article is one that I just felt obligated to put in here. I actually didn't send it to you. I forgot to send it to you because it is so unrelated to anything we've talked about. It has nothing to do with Dave's promotion or the upcoming TV shows or movies or anything like that. But I take every opportunity I can to espouse how much I love this thing. And so this news article is just giving me a chance to do it. The fact is that Star Wars Newsnet has reported that Star Wars Empire at War is getting updates 17 years after that game came out.
I wonder is the people who made that game updating it, or is the community doing that?
I don't know, because Petroglyph is the one who made it, and I have not heard of Petroglyph outside of the game. And so I'm not sure if they're the one who's patching it or not. I don't know if they exist or still make games or anything like that, but they made minor bug fixes, player balance changes, and optimized performance, which is something we talked about. I love the game, you love the game, but there was a big problem about multiplayer out of sync issues. They said those have been addressed, and that stability is going to be improved, that you can now play online multiplayer space battles almost seamlessly.
Oh, so we need to try that again. That was our big hang-up last time we played.
Oh, yeah, no, after this podcast, we got to hop on immediately and play a game while my wife's still out of the house. You got to install it. Because, yeah, I'm excited. There's a problem also, is that both games have been converted from 32-bit to 64-bit applications, which will solve many out-of-memory bugs and crashes that players were experiencing. My laptop can't run 64-bit games. Can't play Minecraft. Can't do a lot of games because it's 64-bit. I don't have like a gaming computer. I'm not much of a gamer, and so it's just a regular laptop.
But it'll play these old ones.
Well, since they converted it, I don't know if it can anymore. I'm going to have to launch it and see. So it may now be to the point I may never get to play. So we'll see if that's the case or not. Or we still just might not be able to do multiplayer. And I say never. When this laptop eventually dies, I will ensure that I buy a laptop that can play.
Well, you just need to suck it up and get a PC.
That's what this is. Laptops are personal computers.
I'm talking about with a 3080 and a Intel 3 gigahertz processor and the whole thing. I don't need that. Put that Xbox in the closet.
I have no reason for that at all.
Join the PC gang.
I don't play video games like at all. The video games I play are Star Wars, and like 3 weeks out of the year in the middle of winter, I'll play some multiplayer games.
You need it for video editing. Come on. Video games is just a bonus.
I don't know. That's what we have your PC for. Anyways,
okay. I
was really happy to get this news. It's my beloved Star Wars RTS. If you haven't played Empire at War, again, go play it. I will plug this game until I am blue in the face because it is so much fun, and it's really unique. There's no other Star Wars game out there like it. It's not a shooter. It is just a straight-up strategy. You feel like you're an admiral or that you're a general commanding Star Wars troops on the ground, and it really lets you live a bunch of those iconic battles. So definitely worth checking out, especially with this new update. I hope that it's a little bit of a renaissance for the game, and that it's not going to reach, a bunch of people have downloaded it. But I hope a few more people download it and always give it a chance because it's worth it.
Yeah, we need to get that message out. So I'm glad y'all are listening to this. Maybe pop on the Discord and organize a game. Absolutely
do that. So, Colin, that wraps up our giant HoloNet news episode. I was super happy that this Vanity Fair article came out. Gave us a lot to talk about. We're very happy and excited for Dave Filoni. I think that he deserves this. He's been with Lucasfilm for a really, really long time, and he has just consistently delivered quality Star Wars that people enjoy, that general audiences enjoy, that hardcore fans enjoy. And so I hope that he has many, many more years to come at Lucasfilm in this position, or in an even better position someday.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, it really is. I think it's a new path forward. Like when I started the podcast, I'll close it out. We're stepping up out of the valley here.
Absolutely. So, Colin, we're now going to head into our next segment, which is our How the Force Works segment. For new listeners, this is our Patreon-powered segment where Patreon subscribers get to ask us a question, and we answer it live on the show. So, Colin, let's hop into How the Force Works.
That's not how the Force works.
So this How the Force Works question I thought was really exciting. It comes from Patreon subscriber Goldie, and this question is, May versus December, which month is the more Star Wars month? So maybe the syntax is a little off, but obviously the gist of the question is, when you think of Star Wars, or when you're in the Star Wars spirit, is it May or December?
Majority of them have released in May. Episode 1, May 19th.
Well, the first 6 films all premiered in May, and Solo premiered in May.
When did Rogue One?
Rogue One was December. And all of the sequels were December. But Solo and the original 6 are May.
Yeah, so this is going to be a question that's more answered of, when did you have the best time going to see these movies? So, 2 examples. One is, if the sequels were your first, like if you're very young when these came out and these were your first foray into the Star Wars universe, your answer to this question is going to be December. If you saw the original trilogy, or even the prequels, when you're young, it's going to be May. But let me tell you what my answer is personally is, Carter, I sat next to you when we went and saw Rogue One. And like I saw The Force Awakens by myself. I was visiting family for Christmas. And so I was in a crowded theater in a home, away from my home to watch this film. And I don't even think I knew you back then. So, but I still pumped to go see it. But then, since then, no, I knew you had to have. But yeah, since then, I sat next to you, watched Rogue One, and it was the best Star Wars experience seeing a movie I've ever had, because I got to sit next to my closest friends watching that movie. And so for me, that's what cements it as a December thing for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good answer.
It probably should be May.
Well,
my emotional answer is December, but rationally, I think it's May.
Well, what I'll say is there's some arguments to be made for both that go a little bit outside of just when the movies premiered, because obviously more premiered in May and the originals premiered in May, and until Disney got a hold of Star Wars, it was all in May, and you have May the 4th, which is unrelated to the premieres, but is obviously Star Wars Day, and that's become a decently sized deal, which went from a play on words randomly to now most people kind of say, oh, it's Star Wars Day, for no other reason other than the play on words. And so May has this big chunk that justifies it for Star Wars. You know, blockbuster summer movie event used to be Star Wars. But outside of December having all of the sequels premiere and Rogue One premiere in it, and Disney really making December this big Star Wars event with all the build-up to these films, is that a lot of TV shows have come out in December, especially Mandalorian always has come out around the holidays, and in that winter time frame. You're inside watching movies in the winter time, and Star Wars has some of their films, especially like Empire Strikes Back with Hoth, have the wintry, cozy vibe to it. I always say that The Empire Strikes Back is my favorite Christmas movie. But also, Star Wars has long had all of these long holiday tie-ins, obviously to sell toys and merchandise, but you get the Star Wars Advent calendars. You get the Star Wars Holiday Special coming out between Episode 4 and 5, way back in the day. I mean, Star Wars has always been centered around the holidays because Star Wars has, in part, existed to sell toys and action figures. George saw the potential in being able to merchandise the movie, and he did that in a massive way, changed the way that movies are merchandised, and all of that merchandising really centers around the holiday season, around people shopping for gifts. And so I think that that's a big reason that December could be it. But like you said, I won't make any kind of determination on it is May or it is December, because I think, like you said, it changes for everybody, and a huge portion is, when did you see the movies? I was a Star Wars fan long before the sequels came out, but I never got to see any Star Wars movie in theaters except for The Phantom Menace in 3D before the sequels came out. The Force Awakens was my first Star Wars movie premiere. And so December does hold a more special place in my heart than May for Star Wars because of the feelings surrounding the holiday season. They do marathons around a lot of holidays. They have Star Wars movie marathons all the time around the holidays. And so it's just, when you take a look at family movies and family entertainment, it always feels like more of a winter thing when we have Thanksgiving and we're supposed to be thankful, and when you have Christmas and you think about all of the gratitude that you have surrounding those holidays. I think that Star Wars naturally fits into a spot there.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, man. That sounds great.
Well, I appreciate it. I would really like, if you have an opinion on this is something I'd really like to hear from people on. So, guys, why don't you tweet at us, let us know in the Discord, let us know in the Facebook group what you think about this, because there's a lot, I mean, everybody's answer is going to be different. And what I really am most curious about is, what is that answer for you? Like, why do you think that Star Wars has a place in this time? And I'll even go so far as to say this can be our second ever voicemail submissions. This will be much smaller. Last time we did a whole voicemail episode. But if you've got an answer to this question, do you think Star Wars fits more into May or more into December? Or, sorry, is December more of a Star Wars month, or is May more of a Star Wars month? Let us know. Call the voicemail hotline, 806-318-8903 and let us know. Your voicemail may or may not wind up on the show, but we would love to hear what your thoughts are surrounding this.
Yeah,
So,
I'd be so excited to hear that and talk about it.
yeah, absolutely. So thank you for the question, Goldie. It was great. We really appreciate it. If you are a Patreon subscriber and you want to ask us a question, head on over to patreon.com/Star Wars Station, Jedi Knight tier or above, and fill out that Google Doc and ask us your How the Force Works question. So, Colin, we are now on to our very last segment. I'm excited to talk about this one, and that is our Star Wars moment of the week.
We would be honored if you would join us.
So, Colin, what is your Star Wars moment of the week?
And so I planned this. I talked about it last time, or in our last episode, and I was able to pull it off just this week, or early this week, on the 17th. And it was, if you tuned into our Instagram stories on that day, you saw what I got to do. And I set my alarm, and I got on the Shop Disney website. I was one of the lucky few to being able to purchase Stellan Gios's lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, it hadn't got here yet. And other people, they can go to Florida and to Doc Ondars and buy it. And it was, I think, was reasonably priced. I can't wait for it to get here. It's a full metal. The cross guards come down. We'll post pictures of it on the Instagram when I get it. But, man, I'm so excited to get that thing and put it on the wall and see how it looks.
Oh, I'm stoked. I'm super excited to see it. It is going to be awesome. I mean, Stellan's hilt and lightsaber are so iconic. And I was very happy to see that it was a limited run, 5,000. It sold out completely in a couple hours. And that is so impressive for a new character. I mean, he's only a couple years old that showed up in a book series and in comic books. Hadn't been on screen, have had no mention of him in a movie or a TV show. Even in the Young Jedi Adventures, I don't think his name has been mentioned yet. It may have just been said, his name. But to have a character from literature be able to sell out 5,000 lightsabers in a couple hours, I hope proves to Disney the amount of love that a lot of fans have for the High Republic and the longevity of this era, and that they don't need to put this era down once the story's been told in these High Republic phases, that fans want more stories in this section of the Star Wars universe. Yeah,
you're exactly right. And man, I'm so excited for the opportunity. I wonder what they're going to come out with next, since this one did so well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. I absolutely agree. I'm really excited to see what they do next, because there's a lot of really cool and iconic looking hilts that have come out of the High Republic that we just haven't really gotten in other eras of Star Wars yet. I'm hoping that the influence that the High Republic has on things like, you know, the gold robes and the white robes and the lightsaber hilts being adorned in different ways, and just the creativeness of the blade colors and the way they look, I hope all of that stuff bleeds into the other Star Wars films. I hope that we see that in the new shows, in the Rey movie. I mean, how cool would it be if in Rey's New Jedi Order there was a kid with a crossguard lightsaber? Even though on screen, and probably the only time Rey has ever seen one of those was Kylo Ren, for a student in her order to have something like that. Or for them to have, you know, the cutlass blade guard that Porter Engle has in The Blade comic. I mean, all of that kind of stuff would just be really neat to finally get on screen.
Didn't you say there was one character who had one that looked like a trench knife with a knuckle guard on it or something like that?
That's Porter Ingalls has
okay.
that. Yeah, that knuckle guard on it in the Blade comic. Yeah.
So Disney make that one next.
Yeah, I want that one bad. If they were to make that one, I'd have to get it, because I think the cutlass knuckle guard is probably the coolest lightsaber to ever exist. So that wraps up our podcast for today, Colin. No, it doesn't. It absolutely does not, because I got so wrapped up in your Star Wars moment of the week that I forgot my Star Wars moment of the week. I was like, oh, that's it. That's all. Mine doesn't top yours because of how excited I am about the Stellan Gios lightsaber. But mine is a family-oriented one. Like I said, I came down to Houston for my wife's family's Thanksgiving this year. And one of the things that we did on Thanksgiving was we tuned the TV to a Star Wars movie marathon. happening on FX, and so it wasn't Disney Plus. We weren't just marathoning the movies. It was on TV, and there's something really, really unique about being able to tune into Star Wars on live television. Just hopping in whenever it's on and getting to see the movie, getting to watch just a chunk of a Star Wars movie, it's a wholly different experience than sitting down and determined saying, I'm going to watch this, or I'm going to show this to this person. This is just getting to jump in. It feels so genuine, and it reminds me so much of my childhood. We jumped into The Force Awakens was when we started, and so it was like, I don't know, probably 50. I don't know. Someone's totally going to accost me for this because I actually have no idea. But I'll say, guess, like 50 minutes in when the Rathtars are attacking on Han's new ship. And so in that scene is where we jumped in. We made it all the way to when they started their attack on Starkiller Base. So we saw all of the Takadana stuff. But just getting to hop into a Star Wars movie with your family, getting to see the events happening on TV is something that takes me back to my childhood and was just really fun and endearing to do. So that was my little Star Wars moment of the week, was thanks to FX for doing the Star Wars marathon.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you have to watch the 5 or 6 minutes worth of commercials too, or?
Oh yeah. No, it was commercials. Yeah, it was on TV. I took a lot of note about when the commercial breaks occurred. I thought that they were all really interesting choices on what scene breaks they chose to put commercials in. Also, the
chance to scroll your phone in between whatever. Right?
Yeah. And the promo that they released for this marathon was really neat. If I find it, I'll post it on the Instagram and I'll send it to you. But they took everyone's lightsaber swings, Darksiders, Lightsiders, across the whole saga, and made them like one fluid motion. So you'd have Qui-Gon swinging into Luke, swinging into Rey.
Awesome.
Just every swing had a fluid motion through everybody. Like a Darth Vader overhand strike that then transitions to like Obi-Wan doing an overhanded strike. And all in really rapid succession. Like they're all on screen for only a second or two. And so it looks really neat and really rapid. And so it was neat. If I find it again, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was cool. It was really cool. But, all right, now that wraps up our Star Wars moment of the week and subsequently wraps up this episode of the podcast. I'll totally be transparent with the listeners. Colin and I were like, what are we going to talk about today? Because we knew the Vanity Fair article came out, and we were like, are we going to have enough to talk about in that article? And then when we sat down and got into it, we were like, oh, yeah, this is going to be plenty long of an episode. And so I had a great time with this episode. I hope you did too. I hope that we kind of shine some light on what's happening at Lucasfilm behind the scenes. And I'm really excited about the future of Star Wars and the future of Lucasfilm because of this article and because of everything we talked about on today's episode.
Yeah, I really am too. Filoni really is going to push it in the best direction, I think. He's not going to do it alone. There's so many other good people and who have it's Santa Claus riding in the sleigh and the 8 tiny reindeer who are getting where he needs to go.
You're absolutely right.
They're not subservient to Santa. They're all part of a team.
They're a team,
right.
Yeah. Couldn't do it without the other one. But I'm excited. I'm really, really pumped. And I hope you guys are too. If you want to be able to keep up with the Star Wars universe and hear all kinds of news and everything else, then please keep tuning into the podcast and leave us a 5-star review if you're a fan. You can do that on Apple. You can do that on Spotify. And so that helps us probably more than anything else you can possibly do. It helps us beat the algorithm. It helps get us into more listeners' ears. If you like the show, please just take a second. It takes really a couple seconds to go in, click 5 stars, and it is an immense help to us. If you do that, or you want to do other things, you want to do more, we have all kinds of ways to engage with us. If you want to go over to our Instagram page, starwars.station, you can engage with us, find lots of memes. We answer DMs over there, so please send us anything you want over there. We're also on Twitter, SW_station, scorching hot takes being thrown out there all the time, so go check those out. We're on Facebook, we're on Discord. Our Facebook group is Star Wars Station Cantina. You can find the Discord and the link in this podcast bio. We're also occasionally on Twitch, twitch.tv/stationmedia, and we're on YouTube. Just search up Star Wars Station over there. You can find these podcasts along with other videos that we've made just whenever we get an itch to make a video. And finally, the best way that you can support us, or not the best way is the 5-star review, and I'll stand behind that. But another way that we are so grateful that you can support us is by heading on over to patreon.com/Star Wars Station and just checking out what we have to offer. I mean, we have ways that you can support us starting at $1. You can get some stickers, you can get an exclusive Instagram story preview, and like I said, $1. Beyond that, you can get t-shirts, we have exclusive podcasts to listen to, live play RPG podcasts to listen to. We've got a ton over there on Patreon. So, just go check it out. Pop on over there and see if you find something you like. That is at patreon.com/Star Wars Station. We also have another project that Colin's been working on for the past couple of months and continues to work on. Colin, why don't you share a little bit about Warhammer Station?
Yeah, at Warhammer Station on Instagram. I need to get a Twitter. I need to get, we have a YouTube page.
You do need a Twitter. I will totally contribute to your Twitter.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. I don't really care for Twitter. It seems it's easy to fall off a cliff that I don't want to on that. But there's a whole other worlds that it's just hard to find on there if you're kind of casual when it comes to Twitter, how it works. But yeah, and then the YouTube channel at Warhammer Station. I'm in the process of making a new studio to make better content. So it's really popping off there. We got the meme page on Instagram. We got some products coming out for Warhammer Station, or for 40K, and probably some other games that are coming out soon. And another thing that we need to mention, Carter, is StarWarsStationPodcast.com. It's our web store where you can get stickers and T-shirts. We have new stickers in the works, and if you have some ideas for products you want to see, or anything, we're going to get it on that website. And you know, maybe Patreon's not your deal, and you just want a sticker, you can pop over and get that.
Absolutely. And Colin did a bang-up job of making that website. It looks really good.
Yeah, and things are popping off. Things are really good. The future's bright. Not only with Star Wars with Dave Filoni at the helm, but with Star Wars Station, with Warhammer Station, and all of our associated pages.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Please go check that out. Check out Warhammer Station. And please keep engaging with Star Wars Station. We love it. We love talking to you guys every single week. We can't wait to come back next week with our next episode. We're going to keep powering through the year. Can't wait for Skeleton Crew and all of the shows coming out in 2024. But until next week, you only got to do one thing, and that one thing is stay wizard.